When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I do not know why I smiled. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was shock. Or maybe it was because I had already cried too many times before that day. She stood near the kitchen door. The same kitchen where I once cooked my son's favorite food. She smiled gently, almost politely, like she was offering tea instead of taking my life apart. She said, "Ma, it will be easier for everyone if you stay somewhere else." Her voice was calm, soft, respectful on the outside, but her words were heavy. They landed on my chest and stayed there. I nodded. I even said, "Yes, Peter. I understand." But inside me, something broke quietly. This was my home, not just walls and rooms. This was where my husband and I dreamed. Where I raised my son alone after his father died. Where I prayed, laughed, cried, and waited for better days. And now, I was being asked to leave. Not shouted at, not pushed, just gently removed. That night, I lay awake on my bed. I listened to the fan turning slowly. I listened to the house breathing around me, like it knew I was about to go. I asked myself one question again and again. How did I become a guest in my own home? I was not always this quiet woman you hear now. Once, I had a loud laugh. Once, I believed love could fix anything. I got married very young. My husband was a simple man. Kind, hardworking. We did not have much money, but we had respect. When our son was born, our world became smaller and brighter at the same time. Everything we did was for him. Then, when my son was just 8 years old, my husband died suddenly. No warning, no long illness. One day he went to work. He never came back. From that day, life changed. I became mother and father both. I worked. I cooked. I worried. I stayed strong because I had no other choice. My son grew up watching me struggle. He saw me skip meals so he could eat. He saw me wear old clothes so he could get new books. I never complained. I never reminded him of my sacrifices. I did everything quietly, hoping one day he would understand. And in many ways, he did. He grew into a good man. Soft-spoken. Responsible. When he got a job and stood on his own feet, my heart felt light again. Then he told me about her. The woman he loved. The woman he wanted to marry. When I met her, I tried my best. I smiled. I welcomed her. I told myself, she will be like my daughter. She was polite at first. Soft-spoken. Educated. She touched my feet and called me, Ma. I felt hopeful. After the wedding, they moved into my house. I thought we would live together like a family. 3 people. 1 home. Shared life. I was wrong. At first, the changes were small. She rearranged the kitchen. She moved my utensils, my spices, my habits. I told myself, let her do things her way. She is young. Then she started cooking separately. Different food. Different timing. When I asked gently, did I do something wrong? She smiled and said, no, Ma. I just prefer lighter food. Slowly, meals became quiet. We sat at the same table but ate different worlds. My son grew busy. Work. Stress. Life. I did not complain. I did not want to be a burden. But I began to feel invisible. Sometimes I spoke, and no one answered. Sometimes decisions were made without asking me. One evening, I heard her say to my son, she interferes too much. I was standing behind the door. I froze. Interferes. I barely spoke anymore. From that day, I became careful. I watched my words. I walked softly in my own house. If I entered the room, conversations stopped. If I asked a question, answers were short. She never shouted. She never disrespected me openly. That was the hardest part. Everything was done with a smile. One afternoon, she sat beside me. She held my hand. Her touch was warm. She said, Ma, we have been thinking about the future. I nodded. She said, this house feels small for us now. Small. The house that held my entire life. She continued, we want more privacy, more freedom. Then came the sentence that changed everything. It would be better if you stayed with your sister for some time. For some time. I looked at my son. He avoided my eyes. That silence hurt more than her words. I wanted to ask, did you forget who paid for this house? Did you forget who raised you? But I said nothing, because love does not shout, and mothers do not beg. I smiled. I said, if it makes you happy. That night, I packed my bags slowly. Each sari carried a memory. Each folded cloth felt like a goodbye. She watched from the door. She smiled. Living at my sister's house felt strange. I was safe, but I was not home. Days passed. Weeks passed. No calls. No messages. I learned how silence can be louder than words. One evening, my son called. His voice was tired. He said, "Ma, I did not know it would feel so empty." That was the first crack. Time teaches lessons slowly. Months later, he came to see me. Alone. He cried. Not loudly. Just quietly, like I once did. He said, "I am sorry." I did not say much. I just placed my hand on his head. Forgiveness does not need speeches. I never went back to that house. Not because I was not invited, but because I learned something important. A home is not walls. A home is where your presence is valued. I let go, not with anger, but with peace. Today, I live in a small rented place. It is quiet. It is mine. Sometimes I miss the old days, but I do not miss the pain. If you are listening to my story, remember this. Kindness should not cost you your dignity. Love should not make you disappear. And sometimes, walking away silently is the strongest thing a heart can do.